The last part of today, in two panels, we tried to solve some issues from the on conductors' behalf and on clients' behalf. And now we will turn to the summary from both panel discussions, as well as a summary of the day from the founding fathers of this conference. And now I'll give the floor to Jānis Dripe, who was a moderator for the second group, as well as the author of the summary on behalf of the contractors. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, organizers and institutions. I feel very small standing in front of such a distinguished auditorium, and coming all together. There was Gunnar Spaliks from 4L, as well as Māris Saukans from RBS Scala, as well Māris Pīlēns from UBB Holding, the manager of the board. All those specialists gave their input into our panel discussions, as well as Uwe Ljubljana and Thomas Šlivka were our foreign experts in our panel. And I will try very briefly to come up with a summary, and it's very important for Mr. Spiridonos and Mr. Rutis. We were not structured in answering those questions, how to answer those questions. We didn't quite structurally answer those questions, how to be more competitive and how to be more export-orientated and how to improve on quality. Let's start with the general outcome of our summary. Construction industry is very important for our state's economy, and all the speakers were united in the opinion of trying to find a topical, well-grounded strategy for the state in the sphere, in the domain of construction. And this strategy might then include also answer to this question as to the capability of industry to offer its services abroad, its export capacity. We mentioned some countries where it works. I, for example, know that in Denmark, Danish government puts a very big stress on this issue. Yesterday, Menhards from von Gerhardt visited Riga, and he was born here in Riga, and his input in architecture of Asia and China, and it's very significant there. So you can see how export capacity can go beyond the borders of one particular small country. So everything else in our summary includes part of legislation, although many of you are not satisfied with the new regulation, but our survey shows that it is comprehensive and acceptable. There were some reproaches as to very bureaucratic and detailed requirements for the new regulation. About 50% of local municipalities, respondents from municipalities, gave this answer. And we also looked at a very strategic issue for the future, this question as to experts' qualification, or setting the qualification criteria for experts, as well as coming up with a definition for the construction manager. We also spoke about niche products, let's say niche products, individual products, but for bigger or large-scale products, there should be minimum 8 employees per company, who is going to apply to participate in projects. So there should be some set requirements as to how what is a big company, a big architects company, which can participate in those procurements.
So I had really to share our experience provided by the architect of internationally recognized architect, Mr. Udo Spieland, and his experience in Germany and in Austria and in Scandinavian countries and Nordic countries is really excellent. So responsibility and functions in process administration as in Nordic countries should be really transferred, with the authorship role being still considered for the author, for the designer, and responsibility towards the executor, towards general contractor. And we really considered that Norwegian process of construction administration might be useful for Latvia, and really function of general contractor should be really reconsidered in Latvia, and restriction of the chains of subcontractors should be really limited. As regards the issues of shadow economy, it's really very shameful to say that we once again repeated the excellent experience in our neighboring country in Estonia. So surveys showed our average salary is between 600 and 900 euros per month. I am not so well aware of the salaries in Estonia, but Mr. Spiridonis mentioned that the salary and wage level in Estonia is different, and it is considered that true remuneration for work and decent salary would be a tool to avoid and to prevent shadow economy, and process for electronic card for recording worked hours or hours at work, etc. We also discussed a single legal basis or single legal framework like FIDIC agreement in the case of Latvian new Latvian library being built with FIDIC International. Then colleague mentioned standard or collective or template contracts that might have really a significant role to play in the process of designing and in the process of authorship supervision. So introduction of standard or template agreements or contracts in particular stages of construction process, which would be really preferable. We also discussed construction control or construction supervision, physical presence of that construction inspector physically on site, and Udo Spieland considered that presence of physical presence of construction inspectors should be provided like in Norway, when actually physically those inspectors are not all the time located on site, but everything is really corrected and supervised via process of the 3D documents on the basis of good qualification of good practice and best practice, instead of partial and subjective decision or opinion of one identity of one person. Thus, quality of construction process or of designing process should be implemented so that every stage would be supervised. Our international experts, Tomasz Śliwka and Mr. Udo, mentioned that every company, irrespective whether it would be designing company or construction company, the attitude is of utmost importance. That is a system of internal control, that is decent dignity and really law obedience of every contractor and every employee. Still, in Nordic countries, such law-abiding procedures, obeying companies, employees, is a common term. in Nordic countries for coordination of a one-stop agency so that construction would be really coordinated and approved at one-stop agency in favor of such a receiver of services. And international foreign experts addressed and really pointed at certification for qualification of expert of every stage. So we have qualification and then complete credibility of that qualification and of certificate. So in the entire process, our foreign international experts, our colleagues and some local colleagues mentioned that education plays greater and greater role. Also mentioned and echoed by the rector of the Riga Technical University. If we really follow every stage of the process in education as well, we would be really competitive on international and on global scale to full extent. While country and the state considers opportunities for arrangement or amendment or improvement of existing legislation. Thank you to Mr. Jānis Dripe. I really feel that you have really listened or really secretly listening to our panel discussion as our group had and was of similar opinion. Unfortunately, Mr. Jānis Dripe has to. We will discuss the same, but at the meeting of the Council of National Architects. That is really a coincidence, but I also will report to my colleagues at the Council what we discussed today, and we will be your social partners in the process henceforth. And if I have missed something, or I formulated and defined not so well enough, Mr. Uldis Pīlāns will stay here, and this is quite a democratic frame of work and platform for discussion. So good luck in the meeting of the National Architects Council. So the same topics and the same challenges have been discussed in Block 1. So regulation of administrative burden, which is really a trendy word in Europe, but quite seriously speaking, in every legislation, laws and regulations should be prioritized, and facilitating or easing administrative burden for users should be a priority number one, not only in the construction sector, but also in any other sector in terms of shape, as regards content as well. Facilitation of professional level. Pillar number one is by encouraging professionalism by positive choice and positive selection, and pillar number two, really strict combating of non-professionalism, and really interpretation of the wording, of course, is possible, but preventing situation when people can maliciously use and submit maliciously corrected or changed or speculated figures and documents for tender in order to have this illegal activity in construction sector. Of course, there are different digital solutions and modern technologies, and not because they are really a wonder miracle tool for that and wizard for that, for openness and transparency of the process, and the state must be really a driver of the trend providing that transparency. Issue of responsibility is another topic we discussed. We had really clear our responsibility to be requested from general contractor, with the responsibility level being kept at every stage of stakeholder in the process of decision making. In general, everything what Mr. Dripe mentioned before, and of course as regards the quality of decision making process. Even more inclusive process should be provided, so all the stakeholders should be involved to utmost, and we support also the idea of similar forums when all the stakeholders of one particular sector would meet and really issue and provide and really promote the proposals for pragmatic approach to be included, and our legislation should be legislated. So I cannot read the last point, bullet point mentioned here, but perhaps it's not so important. So our thoughts really complied, and the peculiar thing was that for those who should apply that law in that panel discussion, for instance, like construction control bureau, really concerned about the quality of the prospect of the future law, were more concerned than the subject of that law, those contractors and general contractors in particular. And of course, executors and supervisors are really concerned about that because they are fulfilling and they are obeying to the same regulation on daily basis. Thank you very much to Mr. Spiridonos. So he will say yes to write them down in public so that they would be really included in the legislation and the draft law.
Yes, if the only challenge for me were to say yes or no, then that would be too simple. You know, these discussions and everything that happened during the last 2 years in the construction company has drawn attention to this area, bigger attention than it ever was before, because this new legislation that was first initiated and then led to a conclusion, led to a final end that we have. This new legislation, maybe it differs from the intended or the intentions that we've planned, although it is no surprise. The more we speak, the farther we evolve the ideas, and we come up with the best solution for a good regulation. If someone could define what a good regulation or good law is, then he or she could be the next president or prime minister of the state. Because that's not easy. But what I have understood from these discussions, at least I've understood the direction where we should go and issues that we have to discuss. Although I seem to be very calm, we spoke about very controversial issues, and I will use this opportunity that my superior and my managers and my ministers actually cannot hear me. That's why I will speak very boldly. And first of all, we have to start with the following. Our market is or area of service is rather strange. We cannot control it. We cannot control how much the state is going to invest in 1 year or another. We do not publish this information, and it doesn't allow for entrepreneurs to plan their entrepreneurship and their activities. I'm not talking about companies that work with 50,000 turnover, but if the turnover of an enterprise is 10 or 50 million, then it is very important for them to understand or to plan whether they will have state procurement, or they will be able to participate in a procurement process for a state project. So, and that's missing. Then I have to mention the word standardization. Standardization means standard agreement, template of an agreement, but not only for public procurements. Why do we want to standardize something that is between a private entrepreneur and the state? Why eliminate private clients? Let's standardize everything. Standardize the agreement between a private entity and a private entrepreneurship, because it's not forbidden. Then another issue, the word FIDIC is something that we are going to base our standard relationships on. We are not going to spend time to find a better solution, because I don't see a better solution than FIDIC solution. Education, in order for more educated people to come into the domain, into area, to be informed about the tendencies, the trends of technology. It is very important. It's of the utmost importance. We should not be isolated within this area, and we shouldn't work with just traditional means. We have to overstep our boundaries. We have to go far beyond whether we're used to go usually. And one of the most interesting elements for the development of the market, as well as to form new grounds for public procurement, we have to speak about this public procurement law. I'm not certain that this idea that the lowest price or the most economically beneficial offer is the best one. Because during those discussions I have not heard of an alternative to this statement. What's the alternative for a price? Because if you go to a shop and you have to buy, let's say, building material, baroque material. In one shop, you can the same material is sold for €5. The other one is selling the same good for €6. Are you going to take into account some other parameters, let's say the parameters of the shop, and pay a bigger price? So I don't think that we will be wise enough to evaluate other parameters other than lowest price. We have a long history of evaluating goods and services by the price. Let's say if we came up with a criteria for management or for maintenance of this or that object, let's say for 5, 10, or 15 years. But how are we going to measure? Are we going to be certain that in 5 or 15 years we will be able to get back the money that we overspent for a good or a service, because finally it turned to be not so as good as promised to be. So that's why I am not certain whether the lowest price is not the best criteria. But if you can come up with something else or something better, and if you can ground your idea with some data, then go ahead. I will be listening and I will be the first one to listen. But we have to be certain that we can get back the losses if we miscalculate. Now about market participants. We as a state should promote or facilitate the development of market participants. We can do that in two ways. First of all, we can speak about very successful examples from Latvia, success stories from Latvia, and Pīlēna Bureau is one of such success stories, and we are proud of them. And there are other examples as well, and we have to talk about them. But the other side of the same coin is the shadow economy. In order to do away with shadow economy, we have to introduce those electronic identification cards, and we would have to tackle the issue of chains. And not only the chains of subcontractors, but also the subcontractors of raw material deliverers. And we will tackle this issue together with State Revenue Service. And we have already worked out the guidelines, and we have understood already where the weakest links are and where the cheating goes on. And it's no longer a secret.
So I must say that 15 years ago I have also worked at a construction company, and I thought that nothing has changed since then. How building materials are purchased, where work has not been done, etc., how they are distributed. And it is important that it happens that the state lacks regulation financial regulation as regards what would be minimum regulation to be included in the invoice, what information should be provided in an invoice as regards building materials being used and control of building materials delivered. And this is one of the directions where we will definitely be directed and heading to. The next really interesting and attractive issue on administrative burden. Definitely, and obviously, we should count that electronic solutions will be the future, different IT solutions, and therefore we should really join our efforts. And you by complaining on construction information system, and me by really preventing and correcting those mistakes and errors, so that we would really have a true tool for minimizing administrative burden, for remote submission of applications, etc. And our Lithuanian colleagues really and truly demonstrated today that it is possible. The information accumulated in the construction information system is really worthwhile for henceforth analysis and analytics. And I would also add and supplement by construction supervision, inspection and control bureau, as their function does not include only fearing and frightening Riga Circus employees by their presence. Thus, their task and our top responsibility and commitment is to understand and to explain how rights of one or other stakeholder and participant of the construction process should be protected. Control doesn't imply only punishment, but also advising and consulting. Further on, I haven't mentioned basic principles, but I do that quite deliberately, because that I just read is content of basic principles, and those are directions we should describe, that we have to analyze and we have to discuss. We must discuss. And it is quite clear that there are issues we will really break our swords on those. Somebody will be wishing and intending, somebody will have a separate and special classification system, somebody not. And therefore, we will really accept the fact that we are living in a democratic country and we have to reach a settlement, otherwise by means of voting procedure with a preference. And thus we have Construction Council established, where top 15 representatives of the construction sector that they have voted themselves thereto, they will be able to decide how one or other process would be facilitated. And this is really a voice and advocate of the Construction Council that I will really respect throughout my actions. And I think that it's extremely important that while taking over and transiting to really cooperation with non-governmental organizations, I really prefer and I really welcome the idea that it is impossible to agree with 25 organizations on one particular sentence in construction law and construction regulation, because it's quite impossible. But really cooperation with social partners like 15 non-governmental organizations will really facilitate and encourage and enable us to complete that work. So basic principles really are underlying the regulation and the laws and regulations. I'm really a fan of the clear understanding about the outcome of our actions before we really amend the existing legislation. There are things which should be really corrected, which are doomed to failure, which are proved to be quite incorrect. We must correct them. But when we will be able to discuss in fundaments and foundations of legislation, I think that we have come to common terms in the first place. To conclude, I would like to thank Mr. Peteris. He is extremely patient and durable person, concerning and pertaining by the fact that he joined a state authority and he is still sound and not crazy and really mad after working for a year. We didn't have a bureau such a year ago, and we had no organization. But now we have the organization. The organization is established and equipped. Of course, the bureau operates with minor errors and minor mistakes, but I'm sorry, but you would really pardon your child if he or she does something bad, but she or he is only 1 year old. Yes, the bureau will not be blameless always and will make some mistakes. But Mr. Pēteris and Peter Druķis' contribution to that is that organization is constantly changing if compared to the tragedy 2 years ago. And this is really important and vital. Dear colleagues, the most important is mutual respect. Respect of the state towards the sector and the industry, and respect of the industry towards the state will be of utmost importance, as is crucial for the actions we have taken 2 years ago. Thank you so much to Mr. Juris Spiridonovs, and Pēteris Druķis would like to add something else at this almost midnight hour. I once again would really express my gratitude to the persons so patient and so durable and quite active with their opinions and comments, and the office mentioned, Mr. Juris mentioned, we are only 1 year old and we make mistakes as everybody and every person doing and acting. And Juris also have emphasized and outlined our trends and our directions. At the moment when a contracting authority really dares to construct and erect something, we will really take contracting authority and a customer or client by hand, and we will really accompany all the process through. Once again, I would like to express my gratitude to my colleagues who are really watching us online, because they are those daily wonder and magicians assisting us and you to become this environment better and better.